So I see us on the page. Let me. Good morning, everybody, and good evening, good afternoon if you are on the other side of the world. My name is Grace Harris. I am in Australia. You're watching another live episode of Women Unleashed here in Grace Harris, author and transformational coach. I am so excited this morning. I've got a guest with me, Cravens from New Mexico, and we're going to be talking about picking up the pieces of you, how to reinvent yourself. And it's about determination through times of hardships, times of cycles that seem to get us stuck no matter what we do. Chris is an author, a speaker, a spiritual healer, and a body talk practitioner. So, this is in my world, I call a multi passionate entrepreneur just like myself, except that we focus on the part of entrepreneurism that's got a lot to do with personal development, healing, self growth, self awareness, and self mastery. So, I'll welcome you again to another episode. And I always say that the purpose, the big vision of Women Unleashed is really to help all of us create intergenerational transformation, because the reason that you are watching this, the reason that you are tuning into this, the reason that you are coming back again and again to listen to us is because you are someone, you're a woman or a man or a person who has gone through some dark times or going through some dark times, or maybe you've gone through it, and what you're wanting to do is either to overcome that or help others to overcome a similar experience now. We are here to share with you the lessons we've learned and the modality that we share, the gifts that we have, that we use and give out to the world, so that we can really help the humanity to evolve, to ascend, to become a better world. And without further ado, I am so grateful for this space and so excited for a fun conversation. Chris, welcome to Women Unleashed. How are you?
Thank you, Grace. I'm very well. Thank you.
Amazing. Let me say this again. I love where you are, your background, and it's like a dome shape. And so I love that. Can you tell me again what was that, what you're in?
Uh, I'm in a geodesic dome. So it's a dome-shaped house.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a little bit different atmosphere in here. High ceiling, rounded walls. There's no corners.
Awesome. It puts us in a space. It's putting me in a vibe where I feel very very comfortable. It's very nature, and so, Chris, I'd love to just start with, because there's not many people who probably understand what Body Talk Practitioner is. If you could let us know what that is, and also tell us, when we talk about picking up the pieces of you, what's the backstory? How did you come to this space of helping others?
Okay. Well, first question, you mentioned body talk. So yes, I am a body talk practitioner. And what that means, because it probably doesn't mean a whole lot from the name, we use body talk. It's a standalone modality, and it's also something that can interface with other modalities. What that means is we're using a language, and in this case, it's a kinesiology, a muscle testing that we use to talk to the body. And we ask the body a series of yes and no questions. Kind of, I joke and say it's like the game of 20 questions, where you ask yes and no, and let the body tell you what the yeses are, meaning what areas of the body are broken down, what areas need to communicate better, so that we can start to map our way back to healing. So as a body talk practitioner, my job is to communicate with a person's innate wisdom and map out a formula, so to speak, that comes from these yes and no questions. And then we do a series of tapping and other types of procedures to integrate and update the body and get things talking, so that the body can start to heal. And this can be effective with traumas, with just goals, and any sort of dis-ease in the body or illness or ailment. And we also use it to maintain just a physical well-being, a state of homeostasis. So you can use it kind of as a preventative type medicine to avoid illnesses in the future. So that's, I know, kind of a vague description there, which we can touch on a little more as we go. But to jump to your other question about kind of some of my story, about what I've been through, there's been a series of events, I would say, that have been out of my control, as a lot of people have probably experienced. And in my journey, I started out with poor health as a child, lots of colds and flus and just nothing really severe, but I was just always had something, and I was always getting over something and this and that. And also grew up with my mother having depression, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know till my adult years what depression even was. So I was raised in that atmosphere of my mother, who was very emotional, just really torn by the woes of the world and feeling helpless that she couldn't do more for it. And just all of that kind of in a nutshell, just the daily in and out of wanting to do more to make the world a better place, including our family, but also reaching out into the world. And it's a struggle, as we all know. And for her, that kind of took its toll on her body over the years. And when she was 49, I was 28, she accidentally overdosed on her prescription drugs and passed away, which happened to be the morning I was supposed to be getting married. And it really was a big shift in events that day, from going from a state of celebration to a state of mourning and sorrow. Was quite an event, I have to say. And I'm sure your listeners, there's some people out there that have gone through similar or maybe worse events than that and can relate. But what that did for me at that point is I had to look at my own health, because I was following in her footsteps. And really what had gotten her to that point was she was just taking all the drugs that the doctors were giving her and going to this doctor and that doctor. And at the time, this was gosh, around 2000. So it was about 20 years ago. And we weren't as up on the East-West thing and combining different types of therapies. And our household was really strictly Western medical and really didn't stretch far beyond that. I don't even think I can recall anything that we stretched far beyond the Western medical. So at that point, I'd had all this exposure of the Western medical, but I didn't really have the Eastern exposure and a lot of the other techniques and modalities that come from other cultures. And I was curious. I knew there had to be natural means to take care of these body ailments and aches and pains and the typical things that people go through, whether it's a shoulder pain, a back pain, or an emotional something. And so at that point, I had watched what the prescription drugs had done to her. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking any more stuff. And I even stopped taking over the counter things at that point, which, these days I'll take something if I need it. But back then I really was like, okay, I'm just done with all that stuff. I stopped my back pain meds and things like that I was on. Of course, check with your doctor before stopping anything. But with that, I started feeling things in my body more, right? The pains were more intense and whatnot. And with that, I began doing things, my diet, exercise, right? Those are kind of the basic things that people mostly think about. But then I took it further. And I realized, I was really sensitive. I was really emotional. I would cry about whatever was happening that day. And it was really easy for me, I would say, to get triggered into crying. And that had just been, again, I was around my emotional mother most of my life. And that was, I'd seen emotional communication, right? So I really was like a muddled mess of emotions. And I realized one evening shortly after my mother passed away, I was watching a movie, and within the time span of that movie, so it was, hour and a half, 2 hours ish, I went through so many different emotions following the plot. And I got done with the movie and I was like, I'm so exhausted. And I stopped to think about it. It's like, wait a minute. Would I ever go through that many emotions in an hour and a half in real life? Would I sit down and go through, joy and sorrow and love and rage and exuberation and just all the things that you typically, that's what movies are good for. They play with our emotions and they pull us along the story, which I think is great, but in balance. For me, I had let all of the outside input from television, movies, radio, news, whatever was coming in at me. And I was having a hard time making sense of it because I couldn't tell what was my stuff inside me and what was the stuff coming at me, and which causes confusion, right? I'm getting emotions coming from the outside. I got emotions on the inside, and everything's just a big tangled mess. And I'm like, well, what am I feeling right now? Why am I crying? Why am I happy? Why am I this? Why am I that? So, with all of this realization, I ended up turning off the TV. I just turned everything off. I turned off movies. I turned off all this stuff, including the radio for a short time, because I realized the stuff I was listening to on the radio, sappy old love songs that were reminding me of old relationships and of this and that. And I'm singing along to the words because I knew them all. And I was like, wait a minute, I need something different. So eventually, as I started bringing the music back in, I started doing things like instrumental massage music, because about that time I was becoming a massage therapist and a yoga instructor. So I brought in yoga music, which was in Sanskrit. I didn't understand what it was, so I couldn't sing with it. And it wasn't pulling my emotions because I didn't know what they were saying at first. And so I started bringing that in and feeling calm and starting to, with the yoga, with the massage, and with all these other things, Reiki and herbs classes I was taking, I started just learning all about the energetics of humans, the energetics of food and of our surroundings, and how that all plays. And bringing back in those healthy pieces to rebuild, reinvent my life, to just totally, it's pretty much, I'm just seeing right now, I just like knocked over the tower and started with the blocks again because the emotions were just too much. And I think you probably can relate, as well as a lot of people right now, especially these last couple of years. We as humans have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And as I talk with my clients these days, I'm getting little tidbits of kind of their stories of how they've had to ebb and flow and bob and weave over these last couple of years with the changing tide of this pandemic. So with that was kind of the big catalyst for me, and getting my health going, which went great for quite some time. And within that's where I discovered the Bodytalk System. I ended up on a table for a session 7 years on the anniversary of my mother's death. And the session ended up being all about me releasing my mom's grief, my mom's pain, all this stuff that I had absorbed from her as a child, and letting that go, learning from it, getting those lessons, but then lightening it. So I felt a lot lighter after that session, more clear. And again, being able to figure out what were my emotions, which was key. So when you know how you're feeling, then you know what to do to either bring yourself up or down, right? So to speed up the timeline a little bit, gosh, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years later, I remarried. And about 6 weeks after our wedding, my husband at the time got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And this was literally 6 weeks after we got married. We hadn't really even started our marriage yet. And at the same time, we had just opened a wellness center to help people, right, with all of these tools that I'd wanted to share that I'd been learning over the years. And that was a really hard blow. So we were given 5 years of life expectancy for him, which was, again, a hard blow since we had just gotten married. We were planning a family. We wanted to have a family and got stopped dead in our tracks. So with all of the treatments and the surgeries and things that came with that, I had to give up the dream of motherhood and just be there with him as he went through the process, which of course is a whole story in its own. But those events kind of over the years really taught me to turn inward and use those tools that I had been learning, used all these tools that I had discovered. And I was like, oh, I want to share this with this person and this with that person. Oh, these are so exciting. And to get that slap in the face right after we got married, and I'm like, no, here you go. Now you need to do the tools yourself. Now it's not so much about sharing them. Now you're going to need them. And that's really what it took. So with that, I really had to own what I was teaching others and really embrace it. What does it mean to breathe? What does it mean to endure? What does it mean to let go? What does it mean to surrender? All of those types of things. And in those moments where you don't want to let go. You don't want to surrender to this thing that's going on. You want it to go away. So we tend to push. And so there's this lesson that comes with that when we're in these dark places. It's that pushing away and denying the experience kind of makes it fester, and we kind of sit in it and swirl in it longer. So if we can find a place, and this is where the work comes in, and where a lot of these tools can help with it. Bodytalk System in particular is excellent with this. And that is, you're in that icky spot. You've got like some little tricks that somebody's taught you, but you think it's just a bunch of baloney. Like, no way, that's not going to work right now. I'm too messed up for that. But to be able to stop and breathe in the moment. The late Thich Nhat Hanh, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, he would say, breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. And breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And when you do this, it just takes you for that small moment away from whatever it is you're pushing against. And you're noticing being, you're noticing the breath in, you're noticing the breath out, which hopefully isn't too much of a resistance. I mean, we do have resistance in the breath, but to be able to let that breath flow a little bit, you've now created some energy movement instead of that stuck resistance, that fighting. And then there's some flow and things can move. So little tricks like that, they seem really kind of stupid and like, whatever. So I'm going to take a breath. That's not going to fix this. But it's not the taking the breath that's going to fix it. It's the starting to breathe that's going to fix it. And you can't start to breathe until you take the first breath, and then the next one, and the next one. And it's like a roller coaster, right? Some days are good, days aren't so good, and you go back and forth. Some days are harder to breathe, and some days are easier. So this is where a lot of these Eastern medicine techniques and tools, yoga philosophy, all of those things can really dovetail in and mesh in with the Western techniques and help create so much more healing and so much more advancement when we work together instead of resisting.
Wow, Chris, thank you so much for that really big share. You've been so generous with your story, and there are so many facets of it that I'd really love to explore depending on how much time we have. But I just wanted to, first of all, I guess, uh, while it's fresh in my mind, when you said, breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in, breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. That awareness and that internal dialogue that you're acknowledging what you're doing, even though you're not really sure if it's going to work, because, like we all think sometimes, I'm too messed up for this. Um, it's so true. And that when you just give yourself that chance for a micro awareness, it creates that little bit of a gap from the pain that you are attached to. And even if that's one thing that you're going to take away from today, from the conversation that Chris and I have, I would be, you know, you have created a start. Because that is, like Chris said, it's sounds really, oh, really? But because I'm here to say that the women that I speak to in Women Unleashed, we can really see that they are the true healers because we are all wounded healers. The things that we've gone through, and in
Mhm.
Chris's life, it was like she was taken to this place where, because as babies we are pure, but we're also like sponges, and so we absorb everything that was given to us by everyone that has been around us. So as a young person, the energy that she's absorbed, the learnings and the belief systems, and so she was growing up to be a little, always getting over something, a flu or a cold or this and that, and all these emotions, that, to the point that she was such an empath that she couldn't distinguish exactly which one is mine and which ones came from the movie or the radio or the people that have been talking to me.
Yes.
And so she was taken to that place where, hang on, girl, you need to now really get to know who you are. Are you going to keep going like this? And did you want to keep going like this? And that decision to just change the internal system by, appreciating music, yes, but something that does not. This is so true. Like in my book, I write about the song, Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits.
Mm.
This is I haven't. I first heard the song at age 7. Didn't listen. Didn't hear it, or maybe didn't intentionally did not listen to it until I was in my late 30s, or maybe mid 30s, because that song takes me back to. And you have to read the book, but it just. When I heard it again, it took me back to a place where I could remember every detail that was happening in the room. It was the first time that I'd ever absorbed secondhand marijuana, and it was, the memory was so, not that, it was so vivid, and I must have intentionally pushed it back because it was too painful to remember. And that's what songs and movies do to you. Now there's an important
Mhm.
decision that you have to make if these things trigger you, either melodramatically or in anger or whatever it is. If you're wanting to be aware of who you truly are and what you're really capable of, listen back to Chris's story in about, what was, 10 minutes ago. I would highly recommend. And also, the thing that I wanted to thank you, Chris, is just the acknowledgement of, well, you were referring to the Western way of, back in the 80s and
Mhm.
90s. We were always just listen. We
Right.
all we knew was the Western way, which in other terms is the purely pharmaceutical way. Now, for everyone who's listening, some of you may not be familiar with the term modality. All that means is the system or the healing technique or the chosen healing way, that you choose to embody. There's so many different ones now that East and West meet one another. So it's almost like spirituality meets neuroscience. And like Chris has said, always check with your doctor, or the general
Mhm.
practitioner as to what's best for you. Because this is true. Like, I have a favorite mentor called Lisa Nichols, and you might know her. For some of you, she was
Mhm.
told one day, in her during her healing years, when the doctor said, "You are clinically depressed, and here is your prescription Prozac." And she begged the doctor. She said, "Can you please give me 30 days before I start taking this? 30 days." And the doctor said, "Whatever." And so she went away for 30 days, did not take the Prozac, and did something else. I think she did personal, no, she did journaling and meditation or something to those effects. She came back 30 days later, and the doctor said, whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing it because you are different. And so we can make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really grateful for these, true galvanizing stories, um, to really show us that it is possible. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you a few questions, if I could, depending on how much
Sure.
time we have. When So let's talk emotions, and when you were going through, there was a time when that day when you were getting married and you found out that your mom passed away, and I'm so sorry to hear that. I know it's been 20 years ago, but I send the young you love and your mom love. And so my question is that going through all those emotions, and at this time you weren't aware yet that you
Mm-hmm.
we're carrying all these things. And for the people that are listening to us, this might have happened to them last month, or maybe very recently, or maybe 2 years ago. Where can the fear and the panic can be so debilitating. And I know that you're an expert in helping people to go through hurdles, things that seem to come up over and over again. What are the first few things we can do to be brave like that?
Mm. First thing that's coming to mind, aside from techniques, as far as like practitioner techniques, is just stopping in the moment. And again, this is the work. Stopping in the moment in that situation and see if you can reframe it. And what I mean by that is with our fight or flight response that we have, the fight, flight, or freeze, when we get scared, when we get triggered into that's this like a panic. I'm going to die. I need to do something right now to stay alive. And it's this frantic feeling and it races through us.
Mm.
And then there's another way we can address it. And you can think of an athlete when they're up against an incredible feat, whether it's, a Super Bowl game or whatever, and it's the final throw and they've got to make it, whatever it is. They don't get all scared. Oh no, my coach is going to be mad at me. We're not going to get the Super Bowl trophy, whatever. Instead, oh, this is a challenge. Okay. And then they gather their resources and they face the challenge. So we as humans, we have a choice like that. So most of the time, and the good majority of the time, the situations that we find ourselves in aren't immediately life threatening. They can be. And in those cases, the fight or flight response is definitely called for to keep us alive. But in a lot of these situations, for example, a death of a loved one, someone else died, but I didn't. So there's a separation there. It's like, wow, this is really, really hard, but I'm not going to die in the next 10 minutes. So since I'm not going to die in the next 10 minutes, I know it feels like I'm going to, but let's see if we can look at this now as a challenge. And that right there can really help to set a new course. It doesn't take away everything. It doesn't take away the grieving, the pain, say, for example, losing a loved one, but it can give you a sense of an energetic, I want to say, being capable. And I know that doesn't make sense in a sentence like the way I said it, but a sense of being more capable, a strength. Wait a minute, I have resources to face this challenge right now. And it's that line there. And so a lot of people, I know myself, I couldn't do that on my own. I couldn't just go, oh, okay, this is just a threat, no big deal. This is just a challenge. I can handle it today. My brain didn't know the difference. So I did need to go to practitioners, and I started with massage and yoga, and those helped at some level, but I still kept having these things that were hanging on me, and my emotions were still very raw and vulnerable. So, as I said, I discovered the Bodytalk System, And with that, asking my body what was the priority. Well, the priority is all this grief you're holding and all this grief you're carrying from your mom. So we did some different techniques. Some people may be familiar with a technique called EMDR. It's an eye rolling technique that's been used for years, and it accesses different parts of the brain. So we have a technique that we use that uses that as part of the technique, and then we incorporate tapping and breathing on different parts of the body, and allowing that old thing, that old trauma, let's just say it's a death of someone, letting that to resurface. Then we let the brain look at it from the now moment, because right now it's not the same as it was 2 weeks ago, a year ago, 20 years ago. So the present moment, bringing the entire body, every cell up to date to say, look, this is where you are right now, and you're in a safe place. You're not in a place where you're going to die in 15 minutes. And the body kind of goes, oh. And it's a real subtle thing, but it can be very powerful for people at the same time. And there's different techniques that we will incorporate for people depending on what types of traumas are coming up. We have a whole slew of this stuff, but it's about creating that space for it. Again, I mentioned that we tend to push this stuff. Well, I don't want to think about that again. That was hurtful. I don't want to feel that again. The diaphragm muscle that helps us with our breathing there, and at the low rib there, and under the low rib cage, that diaphragm muscle moves down when we breathe, so the lungs can expand, and it kind of massages the lower organs a bit, and it really moves in there when we're breathing properly. When we go through these traumas and things and these hard emotions, we shut that down and we breathe really shallow. And I don't know how many people tell me, oh, I'm a shallow breather. I'm a shallow breather. People know it. I'm a yoga teacher, and that's their biggest confession to me. Oh, I can't breathe. And we laugh about it. It's like, yes, you can. We're just going to breathe deeper now. But one of the nicknames for that diaphragm muscle in Chinese medicine is the halfway house for emotions. So we stuff our emotions, and then we don't breathe, because if we don't breathe, then we don't have to stir up those emotions. Once we start breathing, all these emotions start coming out, and we were perfectly happy. Well, maybe not perfectly happy, but we were fine with them being stuffed away. That was, a good little spot to kind of stuff it and sort of forget about it under the rug. But once we start breathing, it comes out from under the rug. Oh, here it is again. And that's where it helps to have a practitioner trained in the type of thing that I'm trained in, where we go, okay, it's coming up again. All right, let's do a layer now. Let's address this with the body. Let's bring all your cells up to date. What's happening now? And it's a little bit more complex than what I'm saying here. I'm keeping things brief, of course, because of our time limit. We can get very detailed and kind of intense on these situations because they're important. And I say intense because it's intensely important to crack it open and let it dissipate, so that we can breathe, and so we can flow through life, so we can function without this heavy weight or fear of opening the door to go out into the world and that horrible thing's going to happen again, or another horrible thing's, this is the story of my life. So this is about changing that story of your life. We have the power to rewrite that story from this moment on.
I love that, changing the story of your life, because this is what you are an expert on, is repatterning. And in a nutshell, really is changing the story of your life. And I guess to water it down a little bit, just to make it a little bit more real for some listeners out there, the emotions, let's emotions are so powerful. That's the reason why
Yes.
we try to escape from them. But once you realize how you can actually make that to your advantage, and first obviously you have to confront, but that's the reason why we get stuck, because they're so powerful. And with the body, and what's his name, I can't remember. I love this guy, Dr. from India, Deepak Chopra. He talks about the
Okay. Yes.
body, yeah, becoming, so the body our bodies actually store every cellular memory. And this is
Yes.
why, and it becomes the new mind. Every behavior and every habit that we have, it goes deep into the whole cellular system of the body. And so it ends up dictating our behaviors because the reaction, like Chris was saying, fight or flight, even though we're not really in danger, becomes that the body tells you. And for me, this was really real when I was 33, 34 years old. This is a long time ago now. I was still in the corporate industry. I was a single mother, and I was going through some kind of a shoulder mystery. It hurt so much. I don't know what's going on. I ended up having to see a, a bone doctor. And so one day I was finally, gonna be confronted with the results of the x-rays, sitting in the office of the bone doctor, and he said to me, "Oh, it's okay. Simple procedure. You get fixed. Pain will go away. It's called arthroscopic surgery or something." I'm like, "Oh, cool. It's day surgery. You'll be out." And I was like, "Oh, there's hope. There's I'll be okay." And then he said to me, this is what he said to me. So you won't be working for 6 weeks, and I'm like, oh, that's even better, because I had like unlimited sick leave. Because I'm like, I get to rest. But then he said to me, no driving for 6 weeks, and that's when it really triggered the one of the biggest fears I've stored in my body as a young child, where of my biggest desire was, how can I get out of this mental and emotional prison so I could be so independent and live my own life and be free from pain. And so it really triggered the fear of, oh my God, I'm not going to have my independence. And what the body did to me, and I've never felt this way until this day. I walked out like a zombie from that doctor's office, and I sat in my car, and I'm getting emotional as I say this, but um, I couldn't breathe, and my heart was just like, and it was this fear. I'm like, why am I reacting like this? Like, I don't have to react like this. I can get sick leave. I can have the doctors here. I'm in Australia. Like, I just did not understand. It was just like, and now I look back, and it was my body saying, you're in fight or flight. You're gonna die. And
Yeah.
it's real.
Like panic attacks, and that's the fight or flight, just pushing you over the edge, or playing with that edge, I should say. And it's very, very powerful. And like you say, that those emotions are in the cells, and the body remembers every little thing that we've been through. Even if we don't think we remember something, the body knows. And that's another beautiful thing with the Bodytalk system. When we're asking things, people don't even have to remember stuff. The body will tell us something happened at age 7. And I'll say, hey, something happened when you were 7. Oh, my parents got a divorce when I was 7. Oh, it was no big deal. Well, your body thinks it was a big deal. So those types of things, they can really hold us down. So it's, to me, I just get so excited, and I'm squirming in my seat right now. I get so excited because these tools, with the new problems that we have, we now have new tools, and we don't have to rehash all these old traumas through the traditional talk therapies like we used to. And yes, there's still a place for that in some cases. For a lot of people, that would push people away from therapy, so to speak, because they didn't want to have to keep going over and over. Oh, I already went through that. I don't want to talk about it again. And I don't want to talk about it again next week either. So this is a way to really kind of bring this stuff up and kind of put it to bed, and put it to bed in a healthy way. So it's not, again, another like, okay, stuff that in the closet down the hall, shut the door, and we're going to lock it and never look at it again. It's more, we're bringing it up, going, oh, that happened. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, I learned a lot. What can I take from it? And then what are we going to let just fizzle away? Because we don't need to bring all that stuff, that icky stuff with us. Let's bring the good part, the silver linings, the lessons, and all of that, because we can't turn back the clock, and we can't go back and fix that. And as a child, I kept trying to do it. Oh, no, I'm going to turn back the clock and my dog's not going to be dead anymore. Oh, no, that didn't work. Oh, come on. If I cry hard enough, will my dog come back to life? I remember this. I was, I don't know, 6 or something. And it's that lesson we get as we get older. We realize that, well, death is permanent, at least in this realm. So we can fight that permanence, that stuff, how we can't turn back the clock. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. It's just like, oh, if I could have just done this different, then this would be different now. Replaying how they could have altered their path by doing something different. Maybe not.
Yeah.
So
What I love about what we do in Women Unleashed is that we give you guys um, options, if you will. But how I like to see it is that you can really accelerate or fast track your healing. There are different options. And like Chris was saying before, I know many people, I was one of them, that I tried talk therapy and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And that didn't work for me because I had to, I had to rehash. I remember the most famous vulnerability TED talk by Brene Brown. It was really funny if you haven't watched it, but there was a little 5-second part of that TED talk where she goes, "Oh yeah," and I went to my therapist and I said to the therapist, "All right, I'm here to talk about a little issue I'm having, but let's not talk about childhood, okay?" Because it's for some of us, it's not something that we like to do, but we still need to heal. And so these are ways that you might be kinesthetic, which is a way, your way of learning things, and that might be the best way for you. I know for me, moving meditation and in the breath itself, and just even when I'm feeling emotions, strong emotions, whether that is negative or positive, well, the body or the brain does not know. It's just the intensity of it. Then I'll use movement to either release it or to anchor it. So release if it's negative, anchor if it's positive, and it's available. It's what gets me excited and Chris excited.
yes.
But I guess, Chris, my one last question is the reinvention part. So this is what you have gracefully and magically, demonstrated in your life. How does a woman reinvent herself? That would be a very broad question, but yes, I'd love to hear from you.
It is a broad question, though. I think the best answer is to go inward. It seems like, I think, or it can seem like, oh, to reinvent myself, I got to go take this class and go over here and meet these people and change my job and do this and change all these external things, which may be helpful depending on your situation. But changing all those things isn't going to change your life as much as if you go inward and really connect in with your heart, which sounds really cliche. But that's kind of like what I was explaining earlier when my mother passed away, and I realized that watching the movies, I was not in control of my emotions. It's that kind of connection I'm talking about. When I removed kind of the outer stimuli, I was able to listen in and really feel how upset and tight my chest was and all this stuff going on. And until I did that, I didn't know. I didn't know that was going on in there. And each breath, each yoga class, each massage, each Bodytalk session, a little more breath, a little more space. I mean, I, like you, I had some shoulder stuff and the old horse kick injuries and all kinds of stuff. When I don't do the work, the pain flares up. When I do the work, things die down, they subside, and things start flowing again. So that's how I know when I'm on track. When I back off my yoga too much and I get lazy about doing the work, so to speak, as we're calling it here, this transformation work, it's not for wussies. It really isn't. It takes effort. And one of the things I say to my clients is, how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to do to get it? And that's what it is. How bad do you want that shift in your life? And what are you willing to do, even if it means letting go of things, shifting your patterns, your habits? And you may have heard a phrase of you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And I don't know who to credit for that originally, but
Jim Rohn or something.
it's a good one. Right? It's a good one. And who you surround yourself with, that's the personalities you take on, the habits you take on. So I'm trying to really make it a point these days to hang out with really vibrant and intelligent people like yourself, Grace. and with that, it's contagious. So we can share that vibrance with each other and this excitement, and be there for each other too when we need support, when things aren't as vibrant and exciting. When there are those times that we really need that helping hand or that support, the shoulder to cry on. There are times for that. I'm not saying that all these new therapies, oh, we're not going to have emotions anymore, or it's going to fix all that. And it does fix it in a sense, but it's more like it puts you more in control than a fix. And illusion, we'll talk about that one too. Are we really in control? In a sense, we can steer the ship. And I think, to me, that's more what control is being able to steer it a little bit instead of just not having any say in the direction that our lives go. And there's always going to be surprising things that happen, and sometimes not as fun as some of the things I've shared. Many of the things I didn't expect and wished I could have steered away from them or around them. But sometimes, even with that steering, you have to go over the hurdle. There's no way to go around. You can't go under. You just got to go over or through, just straight ahead. And that's what we're talking about here. So if we don't, that's when we're stuck. That's when we're stuck in the job, the relationship, the this, the that, the pain. And then we're frustrated because we're just spinning and we can't get out of the story. So if we can't get out of the story, then it's time to change the story. And that's where the power comes in.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I love it when you said, well, everything really, but the biggest. I think if there was a for lack of a better metaphor, if there was a mothership that you said about reinvention, is that going inwards? It really is, because, like you said, we are constantly wired and programmed to think, maybe if I get a better job, maybe if I have a better life partner, or maybe if I have better shoes or better boobs, or or whatever, it's always the out. But
Mm-hmm.
I teach a modality called the life inventory, depending on how you what English you use. But that's exactly what it is: the people, the places, and the experience that you have in your life. You've got to make a decision and go inwards, and really get to know who you are, so that you know what to do to reinvent yourself. And yeah.
Indeed.
Mm. And the steer and the ship, I love when you tell those stories, because I can really put myself in it. I'm in the boat and all these waves are crashing through me. I get knocked around, but then it's not about cutting myself off from the journey, but really knowing who I am. And I know that although it might feel like I'm dying right now, get back into the body.
Right.
Yeah.
I think another tidbit on that too, for the listeners that are really, starting out, is it gets easier. And the more you do this, the more in tune your energy gets, and the more you can pick up on stuff. You have a heightened sensitivity at that point. So it's just like anything you practice. I'll use a basketball analogy. If you've never picked up a basketball and put it through the hoop, you're probably not going to get many through the first few times you do it. But the more you do it, you focus and you practice. Pretty soon, you're getting more of them in. It's just like that with energy in the body, with healing. And once you start to focus on it and learn about it, then all of a sudden, all these little bells and whistles start going off. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And the human body really just starts kicking in. Your brain kicks in, your heart kicks in, your gut brain kicks in, and things just start really happening. And you feel more alive and more vibrant, and capable.
Thank you for that's a very very encouraging thing to say. To know that it gets easier and it becomes natural and actually it becomes embedded. It's so encouraging because we love to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and yeah, it's very to focus on that light is beautiful. Thank you, Chris. I want to just
Mm.
ask you one last wisdom for our listeners here is that today or tonight, as they end their day, how can we to do one simple technique to connect with who we are
Mm.
within or our body? What could we do? Just the one little
Okay.
thing.
I like to teach my clients to just place their hands over their heart when they're laying in bed at night, especially people that have a hard time sleeping, and to close the eyes and to practice breathing into the space, feeling the hands expand and come back together. A little movement with the hands as you breathe, and then inviting that breath to each of your limbs. You might even, this is funny, my grandmother used to teach this one, and she'd have us breathe and think about our toes relaxing and breathe about our ankles relaxing and all the way up. And usually by the time I got to my knees, I was asleep as a kid. But as an adult, I tend to usually make it a little further. But what that does is it really resets your heart rhythm, your breathing rhythm, that fight or flight that we get stuck in during the day, so that things can shut down a little bit and go into that regenerative, restorative mode that we go into when we sleep. So I would say that's a huge way. And you don't need to do it just when you're going to bed. If any point that you feel like the world is crashing in on you, closing your eyes and taking that breath. I do offer my clients a little brain balance video that they can do to help assist with this. And I would love to offer your listeners a free digital copy of my book if they would like to download it.
Yes, please.
And
I
they
was
can do,
going to ask you,
they
how can
can,
we have more of you and where can we find you?
yeah,
Thank you.
they can download my book at myantidote.life. So it's myantidote.life. And it's available right there. Just click the button and start download, and all kinds of tips, tricks, and tools. And in my little email sequence that you'll start to get, you'll get access to that brain balance video I spoke of, and some other little tips and tricks.
Thank you. So myantidote.life, so that's myantidote.life, and we're going to put that link on the comment below this video. And Chris, thank you so much for your generosity today, and thank you for your stories and just being with me. I am very, very grateful. And for
Mm.
everyone who's been listening, who will be listening to this, we love you, we believe in you, and thank you for tuning in. And always remember, be amazing. And we'll see you again in the next episode of Women
Mm.
Unleashed. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.